What's going on, traders, and welcome to this week's episode of the Weekly Watchlist. In the Weekly Watchlist, I do a technical analysis and give you some of my thoughts on the tickers up here on the left. We have SPY, the Qs, and IWM, which make up the broad market. Then we move into some companies looking at Apple, Netflix, Tesla, Alibaba, Facebook, Nvidia, Microsoft, and Amazon. As you can see based on these symbols right here on the watch list, lots of earnings coming up soon, so that's something we can talk about. Real quick, if you're interested in receiving 5 to 10 swing trade ideas per week for absolutely free, then go ahead and sign up at the first link in the description. That'll be a newsletter that goes out every Sunday afternoon outlining 5 to 10 stocks I think will be moving this week. Also, we're on Instagram if you want to check us out there. That's at tradebrigade.co. And we have a Discord chat if you want to chat with myself and other traders during market hours. So starting off here on our SPY weekly chart, you can see that yet again we made a new all-time high up here at 332.18. The weekly bar is almost completely green, and to top it off, it's on increasing volume. So a couple of reasons this might be is we had that strong break to the downside in the pre-market last week, and it didn't really bring in any new sellers to the market, so the bulls took advantage of that and pushed the market higher. If we drop to the daily, coming down to the daily, I do want to point out that there are still some gaps, one remaining here, one remaining here. This gap is partially filled. This one is still partially filled. And I think that's, and now we have one way up here. But zooming a little bit further in, we will mark in our new all-time high up here at 332.18, just about. There we go. Nailed it with the line. So right now, based on this candle, we did see a push down to fill the gap from Friday into Thursday. And this gap, like we said, still remains true. So we'll put that in there. That fills at the high of this candle, which is at 329, just about the whole dollar there. So I'd be on the lookout for that if there's any sort of downward or consolidation action that happens in the beginning portion of this week. If not, as always, we remain playing whole and half dollars into blue sky territories as well as any intraday levels that do form. You can see Friday's volume was pretty intense, yet the price didn't really move in one direction too far, whether that's bullish or bearish. We did fill the gap, but buyers bought it right back up, and we closed with this little sort of hanging man / hammer up here at new all-time highs. So anything to the downside, like we said, looking for the gap fill to happen and then some support to be there if that's the move. Anything lower than that, then we want to see these sort of old highs and support now start to act as support, which is at 327.46. Anything lower than that, and we really want to see this one here, 324.82, hold up as support, just because that was touch one, closed just below, and then an important touch-ish in the net here. So that would be our key support to really go no lower than, to remain in a nice solid uptrend, at least in the short term. Obviously, in the long term, we're in a massive bull run, so I wouldn't worry too much about dropping out of this at the moment. Qs, slightly similar. We have the gap still here. It looks like a partial gap fill here where there's just a tiny little bit left to go until that one closes. This gap remains in the chart here. And that's that. So again, another hanging man / hammer up here at new all-time highs. We can mark in at 223.56. Any sort of pullbacks, and we're looking for this level here to act as support, where you can see it was resistance and then support here. So that is our target to the downside. To the upside, as always, it's whole and half dollars into blue sky territories, as well as any intraday levels that do form. We're quite away from any major moving averages, so those are not a concern at the moment. Checking in on volume real quick, you can see it's about average. SPY had a nice spike there on Friday. But again, volume looks fine. Everything looks good in this uptrend. We're looking for a pullback and then more new highs to be created. So checking in on IWM relative to its previous all-time highs that you can see back here on the left-hand side, you can see we ran right up into our resistance level that we had talked about in last week's video and got a nice pullback from it. So if you were targeting that as a target to the upside, then congrats, you probably made out nicely. And if you knew that was going to be resistance and you caught some puts on the way down there, awesome. We're just about there to 173.29, so I would believe that if the market remains in a bullish state, which it looks like it is based on the weekly bars and the daily candles, as long as we get some sideways consolidation and then another push up, I don't see why we wouldn't come up here on IWM and test out our all-time high. So if we zoom in a bit over here, you can see we've had just nice flagging action, nice move up, consolidation, nice move, consolidation, so on and so forth. So where does that sort of put us now? It looks like we do need some sort of consolidation at this sort of resistance level, which is no surprise. We do have a gap that has been remaining, or that is now unfilled on the chart, and that gap fills to the high of this candle, which is right around 167.95, 168 if you want to play a round number there. So that should act as support if we get a deeper pullback and a move back down into some of these levels. Anything lower than that, and then sort of this next support below us, which is at 167, the round number there should act as support. anything lower, and we're sort of treading into, possible head and shoulders territory where we see a shoulder 1 head form, and then if we get back down into here, then we could see potential shoulder 2 form here, and then a continued move to the downside. We don't really want to see that, but support should be in this area, right around 165, just about. If you guys are enjoying the analysis so far, be sure to leave the video a like. I genuinely would appreciate it, and I think the YouTube algorithm would as well. In the last video, we did get 40 likes, which was 5 more than we sort of were targeting. So let's see if we can get 50 likes this time. That would be a huge goal. First time that's ever happened on the channel, and we're almost at 1,000 subscribers. So thanks a bunch to you guys for tuning in every week. I really do appreciate it. Let's get into these companies. So Apple remains on its bullish tear here. You can see that we're just about at new all-time highs. Let's mark in some resistance there, and then the new all-time high is at 318.74 by that bubble. It looks like, again, we're just seeing the pattern that continues to play out week after week after week, where we see a nice move up, some sideways consolidation, and then another nice move up. Do keep in mind that we have earnings here on the 28th, which are after the market, post-market, so expect some action there on the 29th. That morning, we'll probably get a gap one way or another. Not sure if it's going to be up, down, or sideways or what, but just do keep in mind the volatility will come into the market. There will be some action here to be had on Apple. So anything to the downside, and we're sort of covered here. We have our support, which should come into play at right around $300. That's a key one. And it looks like we could actually draw in a bit of a trend line here. Probably could have done this a long time ago, but let's just see what happens if we do it now. So if we do something like that, you can see, touch 1, touch 2, sort of getting hung up on it, and then now we're well above it. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a pullback into it. Should we come back down into that $300 level, that would be sort of that magic area of super support, if you will. But anything to the upside, which, it looks like we might see another leg up after this area of consolidation, another leg up based on this previous pattern here. We're just playing whole and half dollars into blue sky territories, as well as any intraday levels that do form. Netflix here is looking actually pretty bullish. You can see that we have some consolidation after we broke out over this resistance trend line, which is a good thing. So next we would really want to see a breakout over this resistance here at 343, or a breakdown below this level here at 338.12, that is. So one way or another, we will see some price action and movement. We do have earnings coming up. It looks like after the market closes on the 21st, so keep that in mind. That'll probably be a catalyst to break the price out one way or another. Be on the lookout for that. If we go above this 343 level, we're looking at 361.79 as our next major resistance. Anything to the downside, and we're sort of targeting this area down here at 321.21, where our moving averages are going to start to converge as the days go on, and as those get closer and closer together, if the price does come down into it, that'll act as a super support. So Tesla has been making moves like no one has seen before, maybe similar to a BYND when it first came out, or maybe a TLRY. However, you can see new all-time high up here at 547.41. Now we're getting a pullback, which is more than expected after such a crazy move like this, into a previous support, which we had mapped out here at just about $500. So if you got in on a bounce somewhere around here, then congratulations. That was a nice trade there, playing the pullback. Based on this indecision kind of candle here on Friday, I would expect this to sort of go sideways into earnings, and then pending what happens on earnings, it'll obviously cause Tesla to do something major. It always has in the past. It's always been a pretty important catalyst where you either get a huge gap down, huge gap up. One way or another, something usually happens on Tesla when earnings come out. So that being said, I would sort of stay away from this one personally until earnings happens, just because this one's really volatile. You could get caught up in the spread quite easily, and it's just not one of those things that's fun to get into a losing position on, since it moves so many deltas so quick. So that being said, again, wait and see what happens for earnings. On my end, at least, we're looking for a retest of the highs on anything bullish, any sort of breakdown below this sort of double bottom that we have here, and this sort of previous all-time high at $500, and we're targeting our next support below at 473. Anything lower, 454, so on and so forth. This is a pretty choppy zone where there's lots of structure in the chart. So if we really do get a nice, aggressive gap down, something crazy happens, then this should be an area on the chart where the price gets hung up. BABA is continuing to chug in the upwards direction after this week of pullback. It looks like we are going to start to see some life come in again based on this green candle here on Friday. Nice to see that it consolidated on slightly lower volume. This was an equal day of volume, but that next day was obviously much lower. So good to see that. Always good to see consolidation happen on lower volume and the breakouts happen on bigger volume, as you can see based on some of this stuff in here. That being said, it looks like we found support in between our levels, sort of, and not really coming all the way back down to this 219.82 level. So we'll mark this one off as a support because it looks like a key area where a bounce happened once, and even sort of if we extend it to the left a little bit twice based on that candle there. So that being said, new all-time high up here. Boom, we're going to target that on any sort of retest and bullish momentum early on in the week. Do keep in mind that this little question mark is earnings, and earnings are before the market on the 29th. So something to keep in mind again for volatility. Almost everything on our, or actually everything on our watch list does have earnings coming up shortly. So leaving FB, Facebook zoomed out just a bit so you can see where we are relative to this high here, and you can see we broke out over it. So let's get a little bit closer here. New all-time high and resistance sort of up here at 222.63. You can see we're sort of knocking on the door below it. Pressure cookers starting to form. We have these hammers that have formed, these longer tails showing that there is some support and the bulls are pushing prices higher. That to me would indicate that prices do want to break out and go to the upside, in which case we're playing whole and half dollars into blue sky territories, as well as any intraday levels that do form. We have earnings. Again, these are on the 29th after the market, so keep that in mind. And sort of break down below this sort of triple bottom area that we now have established on the chart. Anything below this sort of triple bottom support that we have, then I would retest some of these this structure that we have slightly below, so not too much of a flush down to the downside, but the low of this candle, some of these lows in here, and then this important trend line that has been resistance multiple times in the past, support as multiple times in the past. That has some significance. So if we get down into it, it might be a great buying opportunity pre-earnings or even post-earnings if we go sideways and get into it that way. NVIDIA is following suit of the whole market and just flagging to the upside, sort of similar to what IWM has been doing, where we see a move up, sideways consolidation, move up, sideways consolidation, so on and so forth. So it looks like we're sort of in one of those consolidation periods now. We have a hammer there that has formed on Friday's price action. So this to me would indicate that we want to go higher. Our first area of resistance that we will come into is at 252.81. If we can break back out through that recent swing high, then we're targeting this up here, which is at 266.47, 266.50 if you want to play a nice round number there. Anything to the downside, and we're looking at this pretty key area on the chart to act as support. That's at 241.26. You can see all the touches we've had, 1, 2, 3. Let's just get rid of these, clean that up a bit. And then anything lower than this key support is our next key support based on previous resistance and now support now that we're above it. So that level is at 228.85. Anything lower than that in our 50 SMA will start to come into play. That's a pretty aggressive move to the downside throughout the week. But again, I think the move is upwards based on the sideways consolidation and just overall trend that NVIDIA has been in. Keep in mind, earnings are a little bit further out on this one in February on the 13th post-market. Again, everything's just so bullish, it's hard to just keep saying the same thing over and over again on each of our charts. But again, new all-time high here on Microsoft, we have 167.47. Anything higher than that, whole and half dollars into blue sky territories and any intraday levels that form. Any pullbacks here, and we're looking for some of these highs in here to offer some support from the downside. That's at 163.12. Anything lower than that, and we have some chop to get through, which sort of happens at 160 and 159.50. So keep that area in mind. If we do get any sort of major pullback, we're still well above our dotted white trend line here, well above our 50 SMA. So I think things are still looking good. Maybe some sideways consolidation, sort of let this thing cool off a bit. You can see big red volume there on Friday, but the bulls really fought back, leaving that nice tail there. So we'll sort of see what happens on this one. I think the trend is obviously still in full effect, so sideways action and then a move to the upside. Amazon has really struggled once it sort of hit that $1,900 whole number, sort of seeing some sideways consolidation, no real movement to one way or another after this massive day up. So that to me would just indicate that we're seeing some consolidation through time. That being said, recent red action, lots of red days in a row, not the best thing to see as a longer term investor, but plenty of action in there for puts and calls both ways, bounces and movement to the downside. That being said, we're looking at some support to come into play shortly here at 1850, just about, to play a nice round number. It's starting to happen slightly sooner than that. You can see based on some of these tails here. So if we mark that in, that'll show up on the intraday chart there for us. That's at 1858.52. That seems to be a key area. You can see clear resistance here, which was once support. That level is 1887.10 just about. If we can break out over that, then we're going to target our next two resistance levels, which are overhead. First one coming into play, that $1,900 whole level, and then the breakout we got to the upside of that, which is at 19 16 just about. So keep those levels in mind if we see any sort of reversal out of this sideways / downward action. If we do see a continued breakdown, then this level does give, then we're looking for that 1850 last ditch effort as support. If that one gives, we're targeting our 200 SMA on the daily, which is at 1833 right now. That should start to slightly curve up, but not by much. And then the 50 SMA is going to start to catch up with that as well. There's plenty of chop and market structure behind us. We have our double top, tweezer top here at 1824. Anything lower than that is this previous high here at 1812. So lots of targets to the downside. It does look like we need to see a move either over this 1887 or below this 1858 for anything to really start to happen. And again, earnings are happening here on the 30th of January after the market. So that's going to wrap up this week's episode of the Weekly Watchlist. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave it a thumbs up. We're really going to try to hit 50 likes on the video and 1,000 subscribers over the course of the end of the month. So if we can do that, that would be phenomenal. If you have any questions or comments, let me know down below. And as always, I wish you a green trading week.